Mr. Gaydom comes and says, I'm the acting national chairman, brandishing some document. And then the next minute, then there's another document saying, no, you are not the person. This is the person. So let's get this gentleman to weigh in and help us make sense of some of this. And gentlemen, thank you for joining us today on the program. Let me start with you, Mr. Sajo. From your perspective, who should be the acting national chairman?
Who should be the acting national chairman? This is a serious one. At the time, my own understanding is that at the time the court, the High Court in Abuja issued the statement suspending or issued the judgment suspending the chairman, Adams Oshimole, who was acting. And I think we should have gone back to that to begin from that point, the point at which the whole matter went to court, and then who was acting at that particular point in time, and then we begin to find a solution. But I think, in all honesty, this thing is beyond just simple arithmetic of who gets what from the court. I think it's far deeper than that, and it's more complicated and more serious than looking at it just from the surface. But in truth, we should have gone back to where we were at the time the court issued the order, and then from there we begin to find we begin to navigate the process to see if we can get out of it. And like you said, it's just 9 days, and within 9 days, we must find a solution. And how do you find a solution in a situation where people have become combative about it, people have interest have been entrenched, and very, very powerful voices that are supposed to weigh in have suddenly gone silent, and the whole thing it's getting out of hand.
Sajo, let me say this.
A lot of us in Nigeria have grown to see.
Mr. Sajo, hang on a minute. What you've just said resonates with what Mr. Gaydom has said. Going back to that court judgment, is that your train of thought?
No, what I am saying is that, you see, if you want to navigate a very tough terrain to find your way out, it's always good. Any good Boy Scout will tell you that you are usually advised to go back from the starting point. And the starting point is where you start your journey. When you go back to your starting point, you now take your coordinates.
Let's make this simple for the viewers.
You begin to navigate out of a situation where you may have lost your...
From your perspective, from your starting point, who is on that seat now as acting national chairman? Because somebody's got to preside over the forthcoming primaries. Who will that be from what you've said?
From what I am telling you is that whoever was on that seat at the time the case was in court, and at the time when Adams Oshimole was suspended by the High Court in Abuja, whoever was on that seat should return to that seat, and then from there the party should find its new bearing and navigate through this crisis and solve it immediately. And don't forget that I am saying this because
Mr. Sajo,
if you look at the objectives of
Mr.
the party,
you get your time to speak on the matter. I also need to get the opening comment of Mr. Hassan. Let him weigh in on this. I mean, Mr. Hassan, well, you heard him say, look, going back to that time, help us. We're not politicians to understand some of these things. So do you understand what he's saying? Going back to that time. So from you, who should be there?
The person that the MWC chose to act on behalf of the chairman is the person that should be there. And let me tell you something, Chamberlain. In the Conference of Eagles, a vulture can never be a member. Gaydom, as a deputy national secretary, we have a sitting secretary. We have NWC members, 21 NWC members that ratified the resignation of Gaydom when he went to become when he wanted to become a deputy governor in Rivers State. I don't think, you see, all these things that are happening, Chamberlain, the problem we have in our party is much more bigger than what it is. People have started permutation of 2023 in 2019 and 2020. When will these people give us good governance? We have governors, we have our party that have promised the people of Nigeria good governance. Our healthcare has deteriorated. Our education is already deteriorating. In fact, it has deteriorated too. People sleep with hunger. Children below the age of 5 die on avoidable diseases. Nobody cares about that. People are dying every day on banditry. Nobody cares about that. The governors, all they care of is to come to Abuja and manipulate the party system and now put their own party chairman so as it will suit them in 2023. This is 3 years to come. When will they give us good governance?
You know,
and
when you talk...
who said that the court suspended Comrade Adams Oshomole? It never did. His ward chairman, a factional ward chairman, that is Obaseki's man, came out and said they have suspended the national chairman. Do you know what it takes for the chairman to start suspended? Until the NWC ratify it, until the NEC ratify his suspension first, before he stands suspended. A convention, mind you, brought the national party, national chairman.
Yeah, but Mr. Hassan, as it stands today, the Court of Appeal has upheld the initial judgment, and that's why all these meetings are going on. In fact, even the NWC did appoint Ajimobi at the time. So if they didn't have, or if that court, are you disregarding that particular court judgment? What's your point on that?
Our national chairman has come up yesterday to tell you that, yes, he has stepped aside. He's a law-abiding citizen. He has respected the courts and he has stepped aside. Former Governor Abiola Ajimobi is supposed to be acting as the Deputy National Chairman South. He's not disposable and he's not disposed for now, and the person that is supposed to act on his behalf will have a constitution. The constitution said the person that is supposed to act on behalf of the chairman is that person, that vice chairman, that comes from the same zone of the chairman, which happens to be the person the National Working Committee has put there.
Okay. Mr. Hassan, just to get you clearly now, you were making reference to, you know, the eagle and what have you, but you understand that Mr. Giadom came with an order of the court. I mean, it would have been easier for us if it was just a statement he made himself and said, well, I want to be the national or acting national chairman. Then we'll say, well, what do you have to back it up? And he has brought forth a court order. So you have your party's constitution on one side, and then you have court orders, which this is one of them. So in the light of that court order, do you still think he's out of place?
That order was an ex parte order, which had expired in March. That is one. Secondly, I would like to advise our courts, please. Our courts should not be peddling into political matters. Our parties, our political parties have constitution, and that is why the courts even listen to us. We must have a constitution and take that constitution to INEC before registration. I think our courts should be treating a party issue the way they treat issues in the universities. I'll give you an example when I was in school. When I was in university, if a lecturer erred, and after erring, the Senate will constitute a committee after suspending him. That committee will investigate him, and in the course of investigation, if that lecturer goes to court, the court will tell him to go back to the university to finish up the processes of the university before he comes to the courts. I think the courts, our courts in Nigeria, should do the same to the political party. We have an internal mechanism to settle issues like that. If you talk about people going to court, Gaidom as it is today, once any one of them takes the party, by Article 21 of our Constitution, anyone that takes the party to the court stands dismissed, expelled. Right. Nobody needs to ratify it. The NWC doesn't need to do anything. He has been expelled. So Obaseki, Gaidom, the person that took us to court on this matter, all of them have stand have stand expelled from the party.
All right.
By
Mr. Sajo.
accusation.
Okay, so, Mr. Sajo, do you disagree with any of the points he's made?
I think to a large extent, yes, I do. And let me tell you why I'm doing so. Is that, you know, democracy has guardrails. Just like you have guardrails on a bridge, and that people must, I mean, it protects the vehicles from veering off the bridge. You also have guardrails of democracy. And one of the key guardrails of democracy is the political party. The political party is not a special purpose vehicle for people to attain power. It is supposed to be an important ingredient and a component of the democratic process. So also is the judiciary. The judiciary is also a guardrail of democracy. Otherwise, impunity will reign in the land. So the way I'm looking at it, and I'm looking at it from his own takeoff, his takeoff was absolutely right. We have a lot of challenges in the country. These challenges have been compounded by the COVID-19 pandemic and its after effects. If all of this are happening at this point in time, I think crisis within the ruling party is the last thing we expect. And let me make it very abundantly clear that the president of the country and the governors of the country would want to be focused on, getting us to exit from the aftershocks of the COVID-19 crisis, which affected both our health care and our economic well-being. Beyond that, I want us to accept, and I want the party leadership to accept, that this crisis is entirely an ill wind that will blow no one good. Before 2019, there were a lot of crises. And how did we get out of the crisis as a political party? The APC had, by then it had 23 governors. By the time we exited 2019 crisis, we have reduced 23 to 19. And if this crisis is not well managed, by the time a dog slips out of our hands, we will go to about 18 states in our hands. So we're not gaining. And you cannot continue to do something that gives you no benefit and you take solace in it. What I want us to focus on is the fact that the party, the NWC, what we expect them to do at this point in time is to convene a NEC meeting. And that NEC meeting should sit down and talk about a mid-term convention for the party. Let us even look at all of the crises that we're going through holistically. Let us begin to deconstruct some of the difficulties we're having.
But you know, don't forget that don't forget that the party has, right. Don't forget the party has 9 days just to do that. And the question is, can all that be achieved in 9 days? In fact, before that, such that you can conduct primaries and get the names to INEC. But let me go back to Mr. Hassan and take him up on something he raised earlier about the order of the court saying that it has expired. How did you come to that conclusion?
An ex parte order has a lifespan. And that lifespan, I think, is about 2 weeks. And he got that ex parte order in March. And we're in June, I mean. So that's why I said it has expired.
Stated, because I wonder how you came to that. Was it expressly stated, or just leaning on the fact that, I mean, it was given in March and you thought, well, we're in June, so it should have expired. So again, was it expressly stated?
Lawyers...
Go ahead, please.
I didn't think. Lawyers explained this.
Okay.
Coyote, I didn't think.
Right. I mean, because we know that some of these things, you know what lawyers do? They always have different sides to this. Some will say, well, the fact that it came up in March does not mean it has expired. But, I mean, this is obviously an ongoing one. But where we are right now, obviously, is quite tricky for your party especially, because we're looking at the time which is ticking, 9 days. I mean, Mr. Giajo says that, well, he thinks that there should be some form of, coming together of the NEC. Do you think this can be done in 9 days? Do you think this is even the way forward, or you feel that your chances of your party in the coming days are smooth?
First of all, we can't convene NEC as at now because of the NDDC protocols on COVID-19. There is no way we can call on NEC at this time before the primaries or before the submission of a name to INEC in 9 days. So I think the best we can do was what the NWC did yesterday. 16 members out of 21 have come up and sought out a solution to this. They have constituted a committee that will go for the primaries in Edo by the weekend. And after then we will now know how to. Let me tell you, all these things that are happening, our chairman can come back within 24 hours or maybe less. All he needs to do is that since Governor Obaseki has resigned from APC with his own people, those were the people that allegedly suspended our chairman from his ward. His ward chairman, present ward chairman, can bring all the executives together, sign an agreement that they have nulled and voided the suspension of the chairman.
Mr. Hassan.
The executives will sign, all these executives will sign, they will submit it to the NWC, and as soon as the NWC, National Working Committee of the party, receives that, our chairman comes back to his office.
Mr. Hassan, let me guess, you got that from some lawyers too, right?
That is what the Constitution says. That's what the Constitution says. A ward chairman suspended our national chairman to the local government and state. Then now, the same ward chairman is saying he has voided that suspension, and we are recalling our chairman back. Once they recall him back, and all the executives come together to sign that they have recalled the chairman back and submit to the NWC, nobody needs to ask any lawyer. He is back to his office.
So, Mr. Sajo, from the look of things, yes, time is ticking. We all see that. What's your impression about the disqualification of Governor Obaseki, who eventually left the party? Was that in order?
No, but Chamberlain, let's put certain things in perspective so that we can be very clear on issues. First and foremost, there is a voice we are expecting to wade in at this point in time. And I think that is the voice of Mr. President. I'm appealing to Mr. President, who is the overall leader of the party, to please lend his voice in this crisis. This is a period when silence is definitely not golden. So we want to hear from our president. We want our president to wade in. We want our president to take a position in resolving this crisis. And secondly, I want to tell you that the COVID-19 pandemic has thrown out some other benefits for us as a country. We're just trying to avoid doing what is right. We don't have to convene NEC in Abuja any longer. If we can hold the Federal Executive Council meeting by virtual means, if we can hold international meetings. Yesterday, the president had a meeting of the Africa-China thing virtually. We can easily convene a NEC meeting virtually with everybody sitting in his state and participating effectively. We can do that. We've moved a step away from where we were. So to tell me now that it's difficult to convene NEC is to actually say we're not interested in convening NEC. And NEC has overall supervising authority over the NWC. And the dispute is within the NWC. Then thirdly, and very, very importantly too, that we need to begin to ask ourselves, why are we changing rules midway? At the beginning of the journey, the APC did not just do zoning, but they did micro-zoning. When an officer comes from a particular state, his replacement must come from that state. The very beneficiaries of the micro-zoning midway in the journey said, no, they don't want micro-zoning. I mean, and it began to, when you change rules midway in the game, you create confusion. And let me tell you, very importantly, whether we are suspending a governor or we are allowing a governor to stay or things like that, we must bear in mind that we, the members of the ruling elite, are losing the confidence of the people. The trust deficit between the rulership of this country and the followership of this country is getting wider by the day. And all this doublespeak on our part, all this crisis we foment, all this culture of vulture that we have imbibed in our political system. We engineer crisis and sit by the side and wait for it to consume somebody, then we get a carcass to go and share. All of these things are actually affecting the polity itself.
That
we must begin to reconstruct the way we
from your submission,
our systems, political systems, the way we relate with
Mr. Sajo, from your submission, that suggests that you do not agree with the processes that led to the suspension and disqualification of the governor. That's the impression. Is that right or wrong?
I do not agree with the processes that precipitated this crisis, because this crisis, like I said, is an ill wind that will definitely blow no one any good.
Okay, now, if you're asking Mr. President to wade in,
Nigerians have said.
Hang on. When you say Mr. President should wade in from which perspective? The law is clear. Everybody is interpreting the law of your political party. So if he were to intervene and wade in, what portion of the law do you think he will be citing in this circumstance?
The entire process of setting up the APC, it's through the law, but the law is based on an understanding between individuals. There was a consensus. There were 5 tendencies that set up the APC. There were the 3 legacy parties, ANPP, ACN, and the CPC. There were the splinter group of the PDP called the New PDP, and there was a splinter group of ABGA that came with Rochas Okorocha and his team. So there were about 5 tendencies that came together.
Oh, Mr. Sajo, are you suggesting the party is about to disintegrate? I'm talking about this particular scenario that your party has now. What laws of your party will the president be citing concerning what's going on? 9 days you have to sort this out, from what INEC has said.
9 days. Chamberlain, you are in Lagos, I'm in Abuja, and we're relating. This is an age of technology. With technology, we can hold all our meetings and conclude all our crises and arrive at a consensus within a day or two. If my brother here is telling you that within 24 hours, they could reverse everything that happened in the Edo state, why can't we reverse everything that happened that precipitated this crisis?
Let's get into jumping right away and respond. Okay, Mr. Hassan, what do you say to that?
To what, actually?
He says, if you say the chairman of the party can come back in 24 hours, why can't you hold your next meeting and do it in no time at all? He thinks that can happen.
Absolutely, it can. We can do that. We can do that. But I bet you a lot of people will not be involved, because there are people that are supposed to be NEC members and can't find internet in their villages. The members of NEC are just too much in the state. A few of them can go to the government house and maybe sit in front. In fact, if you go to a lot of states don't have the luxury of internet. So what will you say to that?
But
go through the members of the NEC. A lot of them will not even have internet to join in the NEC meeting.
It sounds like Mr. Sajo is disagreeing vehemently. Go ahead before we go to break, please. Quickly.
There is the service providers. If you can make a phone call from anywhere in Nigeria, you can have access to the internet from anywhere in Nigeria. Please, we should stop begging issues. The truth is that and most of these NEC members who even suggested that they live in villages, most of them, we know them. They live in the capital cities of their states. They don't live in the villages. But even if they live in the villages...
Mr. Sajo, just hang on a minute. We'll come back to both of you when we return in a moment to just give us your concluding thoughts. Please stay with us. Welcome back. So let's wind down. This gentleman, from the look of things now, the primaries in the party have got to hold. As it stands now, members of the party, even in those states, I'm not sure they know which way to turn. They're waiting for that leadership to be provided by the party so they know where and how do we go. Mr. Sajo, you are making a point. So add to that. Now, how do you suggest the party, because now beyond the NEC meeting, there's little or no time to sort all of this out. What should be the quick things that should be done now, other than the NEC meeting you've suggested?
Well, the quick things that we should begin to do is, first and foremost, put our thinking caps on, begin to be very rational. I have a feeling, and my brother here alluded to it, I have a feeling that most of the combatants are fighting proxy wars. This is a battle for 2023, and it's unfortunate. And we must begin to put our thinking caps, on our heads, begin to be rational about it, begin to look at it very dispassionately, and consider the interests of ordinary Nigerians. We have governance to handle. We have a president that is of our party that is supposed to make sure that he governs this country very well. We have governors of our party and even the governors that are of the other parties. The interests of the Nigerian people should be paramount. So the first thing I expect the leadership of the party to do is to revisit the entire process. Like I said, go back to how the crisis started and see if there are missteps that we took, and so we can correct them immediately and go ahead. But if we fail to do that, the crisis deepens, and then we lose much more than we will gain. And I don't want us to lose much more than we can gain. So we really want, and I still plead with Mr. President, he should wade in. His voice will be very strong, will be a game changer. He must come in and call all the parties to order. Yes, he is a Democrat that respects the supremacy of the party, but he must also begin to believe that being a Democrat goes beyond just keeping quiet.
All right, we hear you. Let's get Mr. Hassan to equally respond to the same thing.
Champs, I think there is no cause for alarm in Edo elections. NWC have sat yesterday and they've constituted a committee that will conduct a primary election. After that, there will be an appeal committee. And after that, we'll go for general elections. So I don't think there is any problem. The problem we have is the alleged suspension of our party chairman, and which I believe, and I agree with Mr. Madam Ahmad, my leader here, that the president should wade in. The president should wade in and speak to those governors that are trying to destabilize our party and those ministers that are trying to destabilize our party. We don't want our party, the National, to be what we have today in River State. Please, I think the president should wade in and tell them to go back and give governance to the people. We have promised people. We seek for their suffrages. They gave us their suffrages last year, and we have not given them governance. We are back fighting permutation for 2023, which is so bad for us. As a ruling party and as a leader of the party, the president should wade in and caution those governors. Adams must go. Yes, Adams will go, but Adams will conduct a election first.
You say Adams will go. How do you mean? Do you mean that there are plans maybe in the nearest future to, push him out?
Of course, when his time comes, he will go.
Right.
But not now.
Okay.
He has elections to conduct.
Okay. Also, I realized that while both of you were responding to our questions, it seemed you agree on one point, that maybe this is just beyond Edo State. It's not just the build-up to Edo elections. You talked about 2023. You've talked about proxy wars. He made reference to, people just waiting around, in quote, as vultures just to, feast on the carcass. So about 2 years ago, I recall that something similar happened in Benue State. And, you lost the state eventually. And the question is, what are the things also moving forward, aside solving this one that seems to be related to Edo, what are the things you think should be done to ensure that this does not blow up, especially because you're planning ahead of 2023?
This is why I say the president should come out and speak to those governors that are trying to destabilize the party. Denied their people governance, come to Abuja and try to destabilize the party. This is why I said the president should speak to them. And he should also speak to those ministers that are wading into party activities which they don't need to.
I don't think that is in fact, you know, what is germane in this is that the leadership of the party must respect the rules that have been set up, the constitution of the party. The constitution of the party is very clear on all of these issues. It is personal interest of some individuals that interpret the constitution the way they like. The conventions that the party had set up over time, the presidencies, all of them should be respected. By the time you begin to change what the constitution says, you begin to change what the presidents of the party is, you begin to change the conventions of running the party, you are negating all the fine principles upon which the party has been built. So the leadership,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
the leadership of the party must begin to respect the laws that establish the party, the conventions that the party has set up over time, the presidencies that the party has set up. Everybody's opinion must be respected. If you have governors that have been elected on...
Can you hear me? You say you want Mr. President to weigh in, but Mr. Hassan is saying that yes, Mr. President should weigh in and perhaps suggest that Mr. Gideon should please step aside and not cause more confusion. What's wrong with that?
No. What we are saying is that the president should weigh in and ensure that whatever the constitution says, whatever the law says, whatever decisions are arrived at a competent court of law should be adhered to very strictly.
I'd like both of you to respond to this before we go. What in your position does the law say in this regard?
In which regard?
In the leadership of the party right now. What the law says?
I would not change my position. My position is that to navigate through this crisis, we must go back to the status quo until
what the law says.
Time the court case was instituted.
Oh, okay.
At the time when the pronouncement was made for the chairman to step aside.
All right. Mr. Hassan.
Nothing short of that.
What the law says is what
Hassan,
the law says, and what our constitution says is what the NWC did yesterday.
Okay, so there you go. It looks as if you're agreeing to disagree on this particular matter, but we do thank both of you for coming on. Our Hassan, a member of the APC, and Mr. Ahmed Sadio, former Commissioner for Information, Adamawa State, also a member of the APC. So we will be back in just a moment and look at the legal position on this one. Stay with us.